beers after beer 30, though.
I don't disagree with that either.
All right, I'm going to bring the Butte-Silver Bow Council of Commissioners Committee of the Whole meeting to order for Wednesday, June 10th, 2020. Can we please have a roll call? Okay, if the commissioners could, if they could please check in on the right.
Chairman Morgan, I don't have a check-in panel.
Okay.
Chairman Morgan, I don't have a video.
All right, sounds like IT's working on that.
Here it is.
Okay.
Here's your panel.
Is everybody here, Jason? We're missing also. Looks like everyone's here. Commissioner, 11 present, 1 absent. Commissioner Sorich is excused for tonight. Commissioner McDonough, would you please lead us in the prayer, please?
Almighty God, we implore you, look upon us and guide us this night as we make decisions which shall greatly affect our community of Butte-Silver Bow. Direct our thoughts, words, and deeds so that we please you and best serve our fellow citizens. Amen.
Amen. Thank you.
Amen.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the
republic for which it stands,
one nation, under
indivisible,
with liberty and justice for all. That's hard to repeat when you have multiple different ones coming at you. The next item on tonight's agenda is public comment on any items that's on tonight's agenda. I do not have anything to read into the record, and so we will go to the phone lines and see if anybody is there. So we'll give that a couple seconds. Okay, there doesn't appear to be anybody on the phone, so we will move on to the report of the chair. The only thing that I wanted to report on, just to give everybody an update or a heads up that it happened, was we did have our public administrator, Janice Casarato, resign her position last Friday, effective immediately. And so the Council of Commissioners will have to go forward with the process of appointing an interim public administrator. And so looking at the rules and everything with that, our initial plan right now, this could change, this is just something that we were working on this week, was this Friday I'm going to submit a letter to the Council of Commissioners setting up a schedule to interview candidates for this position. We are going to start advertising this Friday for the position, and then we will be accepting applications until Friday, June 26th. And then at that point, the applications that are received will be forwarded to the commissioners, and we will be holding the interviews on at the July 1st regular meeting on that night. And then after we go through the interviews and ask them questions, we can make a motion and appoint that individual to the position. And then on July 2nd, in the morning, that person would be sworn into the office. That person would hold that position until the general election in November. In the meantime, in between that, this body does have to open a 10-day period for a declaration of nomination, which will allow any and all candidates that meet the criteria to file for the candidacy for the position. And at that point, their name would be submitted on the ballot. And so we do have to do that prior to August 11th to make sure that we follow all the posting regulations and the clerk and recorder's rules of order for that submission. So that's kind of the plan. I'll outline all that in a letter this Friday, but if anybody has any questions, please feel free to contact me and we can make adjustments as we need to. So to sum it up, we will start collecting resumes this Friday through the 26th of June, and then appoint on July 1st. So I will update you if that does change soon. Ms. Gleason, I asked you a couple questions on the budget, the schedule, and all that. So if you could just give the commissioners an update on the budget process, please.
Thank you, Chairman Morgan, Commissioners. For the record, Danette Gleason, the Finance and Budget Director. It is a good point in time to kind of give an update, especially during these times, as how we're moving forward in the budget process, where we're at, and the plans moving forward. So, is it on your side? There we go. Can you hear me now?
Try that.
Okay. All right. So moving forward, currently the Chief Executive and the Finance and Budget Department has been meeting with department heads and elected officials on their budgets and what they had submitted early on prior to COVID. We had a very good start on the budget process. Probably would have been submitted to you way before now. However, COVID kind of happened, and here we are today. And so we are meeting with the departments over the next, I finish those meetings over the next couple weeks. We will hope to have the budget turned over to council around the 25th or 26th of June. We can either deliver them to you or you can pick them up in our office and they'll be available to you. And probably the following week, the 29th, 30th, or even on the regular meeting, the 1st, just depending upon how packed the first agenda is, we'll be asking for a meeting just to discuss where we're at in the process, what the Chief Executive's recommendations are at this point, and then let the departments kind of fill in the gaps similar to what we've always done in the past. Just wanted to give you a little update on where we're at in the budget process. Some of you are in the budget, the context of the budget, and I know that some of the departments might have already been reaching out to you just to kind of discuss with you what's going on in the process. So the strategies that we're using under the Chief Executive's recommendation, and then also having several discussions with many of you offline, but that we are developing a budget with no tax increase. So currently today, we anticipate absolutely no tax increase in the budget. There will be no user fees increase. That includes like metro, water, stormwater. The only increase that we will have on that side is the landfill collection that we've already presented to you, and that contract was well underway before we even hit COVID. And so that one will be the slight increase for the year. Again, another strategy and goal of this budget currently with the Chief Executive's recommendation is that we will maintain all permanent positions at their current FTE level. So full-time or part-time people will be maintained in this budget currently. And then continue to provide as much services and do infrastructure development that's allowed. So in the ideas and why we've taken this approach, and was kind of a recommendation by the Finance and Budget Department in coordination with the Chief Executive, is the uncertainty that COVID has brought to us. So it's really difficult in these uncertain environments. I've worked for the local government in the Finance and Budget Department during some really tough times before, where we've had major employers go bankrupt. We've had the mine furlough many workers down to minimum staffing. I've worked in all those scenarios, and even though those were very difficult times and we had to eliminate positions and do cuts in line items, this has been probably the most challenging, just surrounding the uncertainty of it. We also know that we have several revenues sources currently impacted. We know on the water division side, the meter rate customers, those large users, the school districts, the Montana Tech, the bars, the restaurants, gyms, swimming pools, all that, those are major users, and they had limited use there for many weeks, and so we know that our revenues were down there, and then they're continued to slowly reopen, but we're still seeing decreased revenues on those side, and we just really don't know how that's going to play out over the next few months. We also saw immediate impact at the Civic Center, so events being canceled. But we kept those and maintained those positions and had those staff people working to do things such as the maintenance and that needed to be done down there. But likewise, we don't have that backfill revenue to help offset the tax support there. Another big component that a lot of people aren't really familiar with is that we earn well over $1 million in interest revenue a year in our tax supported funds, and in the user rate funds. And so right now, as we all know what the market conditions are looking like, I anticipate that dropping off significantly. We do have some long-term investments in our portfolio related to just projecting cash flows, because in some cases where we had funds that aren't expended every year, we've been able to do some long-term investments. So we'll still have some interest earnings, but it's not going to look as well as it did in fiscal year 19. We also did really, really well in fiscal year 20. So I'm not really worried about 20. I'm worried about what's going to happen in 21 with those revenues. And they really do help offset user fees and tax revenues. And then we're not seeing any backfill on the federal side or the state side for any of these lost revenues. So there's been legislation introduced. There's the HEROES bills, the last funding bill that Congress was looking at. And in that bill, they did have some components about backfilling and assisting local governments as well as state governments for lost revenues. That's not gone anywhere in several weeks, so not sure how that'll play out. The money that the state has today under the CARES Act, it was pretty clear in the CARES Act that, and the directive of the Treasury that the state has received on how those funds can be spent, is that not to backfill on revenue. So we're challenged with trying to make things and continue with the expenditure levels that we're at and meet all of our obligations based on some potential revenue shortfalls. So kind of like a struggle that we're doing there. On the expenditure side, what we did immediately, and I think you were all copied in on those emails, under the direction of the chief executive, we initially, right when COVID hit, March 13th, March 14th, in that time frame, we sent out an email asking department heads and elected officials to really be responsible. Not that they're not always, but really take into consideration any purchase if it was absolutely needed at that point in time. And so they've done really good at that. I mean, they've been exceptional, trying to cooperate and help in any way possible that they can. And moving forward, we've kept a level budget right now. So no increases in any of those line item expenditures. And we all know that a lot of costs haven't stayed flat. So it's going to be a continued cooperation between everyone trying to make things happen during the next fiscal year. We do have increases related to salaries and benefits that are in the budget. We had many union contracts. Most all the union contracts were settled. So in 21, those contracts had increases already embedded in them. And so those are in the budget. And then you will see some carryover capital. So we asked the departments to hold off on any capital purchases. We didn't know immediately how we were going to continue with our cash flow. We didn't know how that was going to be impacted. We didn't know if the state was going to be able to continue to fund their grants or their entitlement payments and their funding that we see come down in the third and fourth quarter of the fiscal year. And so we immediately stopped the capital expenditures. So in the 21 budget, you do see some of those carried over to be expended, as well as some items just couldn't be purchased because of COVID. We're being told that some vehicles and whatnot that had been ordered like in January, February timeframe have been delayed for shipment till September or October. So those will be in the budget as well. And then any grant funded capital is in the budget, as well as any grant funded line item increases or projects. Those are in the budget. We had about 5.5 or 6 positions that were requested in this budget. We will not be putting them in the budget at this point in time. as you can see, it's just going to be challenged enough as it is just to meet our current staffing levels. So those positions have not been added to the budget. However, you will see coming on some positions hired just directly related to COVID, and those will be part-time, per diem, even type positions that will be hired on for possibly like contact tracing or cleaning, those type of items that are directly paid for either through FEMA or through the CARES Act funding that we receive from the state of Montana. Then we also have 9 or 10 positions that are vacated positions in the budget right now, and those positions will remain vacant. We will still request to budget for them, but to assist with our cash flow till we know really where we stand, we will be requesting that those positions not be filled at this time. And I can tell you there's one in the Finance and Budget Department, there's one in the Water Administration Office, there's an electrician, labor in the water company, reception floater position that we have downstairs, probationary fireman, a project manager, there's one other position, inspector or something that's spread across public works. But we'll have more details for you when we present the budget. But those positions we've asked to maintain in the budget. Again, like I said, but we will not be immediately filling those positions. Mainly so, we already know we're short somewhat on revenues today. I will know a little bit better early next week on what our delinquent property taxes will look like. They'll be finished posting those property tax payments this week. We asked them to finalize as much as they could. We had a couple banks that came in just slightly at the last date, and they have a lot of transactions involved in them. So Lori and her department were finishing everything up. And then we will have those all posted, and then we'll be able to spread the taxes and look at those numbers on Monday. So we'll kind of know what we're looking at as far as delinquency goes. I am not really so much worried currently what our delinquencies are going to look like. It's more moving on into November. And for example, some of the things that we've been discussing is, if we've been told, you've been told, you've seen it on TV, that there's a potential for a surge in the fall with COVID. So does that mean or translate to us that is there going to be a directive that they delay property taxes, or at least not in November, not charge penalty and interest on property taxes? So that's one thing that we're taking into consideration. If it looked like that, what would we do? I think for the most part, we would see banks and mortgage companies and probably our large employers paying their taxes. But would that increase our delinquency there and our cash flow? Not that we would never get paid for those property taxes, but is it going to delay in our cash flow again? And then just the main uncertainty of really what's going to happen out there over the next few months until there's a good vaccine available for all of us. There's also things that we've looked at from economists, looking at unemployment and looking at potential loss in small business or just a delay in opening in small business, and how is that going to impact the local government. And then just our funding sources, knowing, we've had additional COVID expenditures. We've been buying a lot of different items to protect our employees and to protect the public when they come into our facilities as well. And so, what's it going to look like on the revenue side when we get some of that money back? Is it going to be 100%, 75%? Are some items just going to be ineligible for a return? So we're still working through all those. So a lot of uncertainty. And so that's why we took a really conservative, or recommended to the chief executive, a really conservative approach in this budget right now. And then also being very conscious of what the taxpayers really can afford as we move forward. So that's kind of where we are today. Again, like I said, we'll be able to share a lot more numbers and details when we have our chief executive budget presentation the first week, or end of June, first week of July.
Thank you, Danette, for that update. I'm sure there's some questions that the commissioners have for you. Unfortunately, at this time, I can't take any questions because we can't have any discussion back and forth on that. So if the commissioners do have questions, I would just ask that they follow up with Ms. Gleason in her office and get anything answered that they need
Yeah.
to. So,
Yep, and again, we'll be presenting, and they'll have opportunity, probably the 29th or 30th first, somewhere in there.
sure. Thank you.
Thanks, Annette.
Thank you.
The next item on tonight's agenda is Section 1, Communications. Communication 19-578. Gary Rundle, citizen, requesting Council of Commissioners consideration to purchase property located at 1820 Banks Avenue, Butte, Montana. I wish to redeem the property from Butte-Silver before the tax sale in February. We'll continue to hold this in abeyance pending the resolution. County Attorney Joyce, can I ask you just where we're at in that process?
Chairman Morgan, as you might recall, we are required to have a public hearing, and we haven't scheduled that based on COVID situation. So we would have to schedule the public hearing, and then following that could move through the process.
Okay, thank you. So we'll continue to hold that in abeyance, and we'll try to work with our health department and others and see when we might be able to schedule those moving forward. Number 2, Communication 19-582, Ed Banderob, Greeley Neighborhood Community Development Corporation, requesting Council of Commissioners to invite a Montana DPHHS toxicologist to give a presentation relative to the hazard risks to human health of heavy metal contaminants present in the Butte-Silver community. We'll continue to hold that in abeyance. Number 3, Communication 2020-04. Mike Townsend, citizen, requesting Council of Commissioners to consider the repurchase of my home located at 105 West Porphyry. I will comply with all the rules and regulations of the County Enrichment Program. We'll continue to hold that in abeyance. Number 4, Communication 2020-90. Eldon Beal, citizen, requesting Council of Commissioners for more clarifications on speed limits around Emma Park, which is also a bus route by Butte High School. Also, we are asking that the snow be plowed around the park and by Parks and Rec and or by the city. We'll continue to hold that in abeyance as an ordinance will be submitted for the council next week. Number 5, Communication 2020-206. Mark Neary, Public Works Director, requesting Council of Commissioners for the time on the Council of Commissioners June 3rd, 2020. Council of Commissioners regular meeting to open bids for materials for Dewey Phase 3 waterline replacement. We did hold that, so Commissioner Shaw.
Thank you, Commissioner Morgan, Chairman. I would move to place Communication 2020-206 on file.
Second.
Okay, there's been a motion made and seconded. Is there anything on the question? Would the commissioners please vote? Would anyone like to change their vote? Would the clerk please record the vote? Looks like we have 10 yea, and we're missing Commissioner Callahan's. Oh. What are we? Oh, Commissioner O'Neill and Commissioner Callahan. Oh, Callahan's there. Commissioner O'Neill, how did you vote? Commissioner O'Neill?
I voted yes.
Okay. Motion passes 11-0. Number 6, Communication 2020-207. Mark Neary, Public Works Director, requesting Council of Commissioners for time on the Council of Commissioners June 3rd. Council of Commissioners regular meeting to open bids for materials for the Big Hole transmission line. We did hold that as well, so Commissioner Shaw.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. At this time, I move to place Communication 2020-207 on file.
Second.
Okay, there was a motion made and seconded. Does anyone have any questions? Would everyone please vote? It looks like there it is. Would everyone please vote? Would anyone like to change their vote? Would the clerk please record the vote? Looks like we have 11 yea, 0 nay. Motion passes. Moving on to number 7, Communication 2020-221. Danette Gleason, Finance and Budget Director, requesting Council of Commissioners for time on the June 3rd, 2020 Council of Commissioners agenda to give a presentation on an alternative method for assessing fees for the countywide road maintenance district. We did hold that presentation, so Commissioner Shaw.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I move to place Communication 2020-221 on file.
Second.
Okay, there's been a motion made and seconded. Does anyone have any questions? Would everyone please vote? Looks 1 second. Okay, would everyone please vote? Would anyone like to change their vote? Would the clerk please record the vote? Looks like we have 11 yea, 0 nay. Motion passes. Number 8, Communication 2020-224, Todd Breidenfeld, Breidenfeld Investment LLC, requesting Council of Commissioners to approve the purchase of a vacant lot addressed at 611 South Idaho, lot number 24 in block number 4 of the Travonia Addition, Butte, Montana, parcel number 1054300, which BLLC owns as a rental, and then immediately will sell it as a nice single-family home. This project will greatly enhance the look of and the property values of the neighborhood. We'll continue to hold that in abeyance pending a report back from the planning department, I believe. Number 9, Communication 2020-226, Mark Neary, Public Works Director, requesting Council of Commissioners for time on the June 17th, 2020 regular meeting agenda for a presentation on countywide maintenance district work plan update for fiscal year 2020 and work plan for fiscal year 2021. We'll continue to hold that in abeyance as well. Next on the agenda is any public comment on any public matter not on the agenda. I do not have any letters to read into the record, so we will just go to the phone lines and see if anybody is there. There currently is no one in there. We'll give it a few seconds. Okay. No one has called in tonight, so I will move for a motion to adjourn.
I move to adjourn.
Do I have a second? Was there a second?
Second.
All right, I have one. All those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? Motion passes. Have a good night, everyone.
Chairman Morgan, just a quick thing about our attendance tomorrow. I was just wondering if we have a show of hands of who might be attending at 4 o'clock tomorrow afternoon. Just reference. So.
Yeah, would everyone just tonight or tomorrow morning please send Barb an email confirming that you will be at the meeting tomorrow? That would be more helpful. So, is there anything else? All right. Have a good night, everyone.